So let us start with the presentations. The first one invites us to reflect about the claim of the Congress, behavioral economics. If we're not rational, what are we? Jorge Martínez-Arroyo, president of the DEC Association, is going to take the floor. Good morning. Behavioral economics sounds quite techy, right? So let's start with something easy. First question. Let me see. You see this image? You don't see it anymore because I want to ask you quickly. Raise your hands, the ones who saw one color in the picture, two colors, 3, 4, none. I'm sorry, but this picture was taken black and white. This picture is taken black and white. The only difference is that there's a pattern of colors, like kind of a grid. There's a white T-shirt with yellow stripes and a gray T-shirt with blue stripes. What has happened here? Well, the brain knows that our eye is imperfect and is filling in what it intuits that there is as the eye opens up. So you see white T-shirts or gray T-shirts that at a certain moment in time we think they have a color. The problem is that the eye is not only imperfect, but when we're sad or depressed, it's peculiar, but it sends us bluer and grayer tones. And now when you're looking at me, your eye is moving 3-4 times a second because out of the image projected, there's just one single part which is not blurred, and it needs to move to have a clear image. So the image is filling in gaps from previous experiences to get information, and with the information given by the what it sees. And let me tell you more that with the aging, eyes see less color. It wears off. The factors identifying color wear off with age. So with age, we will see images as a vintage, but the brain self-adjusts and adjusts what eyes receive, so we still get the colors we see. The brain, apart from adjusting the eye, adjusts what we leave. In fact, when we have some piece of information, the brain checks our previous experiences, and once again, it calibers, it classifies, and fills in the gaps. This is no imperfection. It is the capacity allowing us, or allowed us in the past, that if we saw a mammoth or a lion, we wouldn't just remain and staring to see if it was a lion or not, or a kitten, because that would be the last thing we would do in our lives. So it allows us to identify risks very quickly and opportunities very quickly too. But once all these years of survival have gone by, we realize that when we're at a certain place in time, we live a certain reality. The different people that are at that moment in time perceive reality in a different way. We're not going to talk about couple issues, maybe for coffee break if you want, but you see how the brain manipulates, if we can put it that way, that even if we take a memory out of the brain of what Dumbledore did at Harry Potter, he took a memory. Each time we take a memory and bring it forward to our consciousness, to our present, little by little we retouch that memory with the experience we've lived, and we change it in a slightly manipulated version. So each time we have a memory, it is more and more false to the reality that happened. Something else, which is also very important, is that the brain takes rational decisions. Or is it manipulating us? Is it changing us? The thing is that neoclassic economy was based on the fact that consumer took rational decisions to optimize resources. And from then on, that's what we've been saying, but that's not really the reality, because very often we have to go to the gym, we're sitting in the couch watching TV, watching Netflix, and the rational thing would be to stand up and go to the gym, but we don't go. when we were students, we had to study, and we left, and we just studied the night before the exam, and that's not rational. What happens? The brain really knows that taking decisions, difficult decisions, and people will understand it, it wears off. It's exhausting, not only from the amount of time that you use, but from the point of time of the energy and the effort that we have to make. So the brain tries to take decisions feeling comfortable with less wearing off. If we think about the former days, one of the things we had to do was to preserve our body and use as minimum energy as possible. So the brain takes to take easy decisions, and very often it takes shortcuts that we will talk about them later, a series of proxies to take those easy decisions. In fact, each time we take a decision, we take two decisions. The first decision is, do we need to accumulate more information to take the decision to buy shoes? Or with information I already have, can I take a decision? And then once we know that we have enough information, the second decision is what kind of shoes we're going to buy. If the brain were rational, we would first think that we only going to invest a lot of time in taking rational decisions for important things in life. And those things that are not important, it will take less time. So let's check it quickly. Raise your hand, the ones that have invested more time in choosing a pair of shoes than when thinking about your pensions plan. Well, okay. So let's make it more difficult. Raise your hands, mainly those ones who have invested more time in buying a TV than choosing the university of your kids. No, don't raise your hand. Is that rational? No, it's not rational. So what we need to understand is that in some cases we invest time or not, and when do we use this process? So what we're going to do now is to explain how these things works. But behavioral economics studies why and how these decisions are taken automatically or semi-automatically that influence the purchase or recommending something. And the thing is that consumers and all of us, on some occasions, when we go towards these automations, we're not aware that we're living the decision being taken by the subconsciousness. And there are different elements there that we understand that make us take decisions. So let's start with I'm going to be quite quick on the mechanisms. First, it's the autopilots. Automating mechanisms that our brain has. For example, pricing. Why do we think that 0.99 is cheaper than €1? These roundups that have always been done. So the paradox of choice. What behavioral economics says is that customers want to have variety when deciding, but there comes a time where we collapse when we have too much variety. It's a message that hasn't reached the Chinese restaurants because they have 400 dishes in their menus. But that happens to everyone. Loss aversion. There's a lot of people who know more about this, but we value more what we lose than what we can win. For example, they tell you, I give you 1 week of travel, and you have to choose 1 week or 50% of probabilities of going 4 weeks on holidays. And people choose 1 week because it's a loss aversion. Fortunately, that's why we've got solvent banks like Santander, and it is very important to understand how people behave when they think they can lose something. The framing effect. In theory, it should be the same choosing a yogurt with 20% fat or 80% fat free, but depending how the product is produced, the environment, and the frame of the product, we will choose one thing or another. And of course, social influence. If we go to pension plans, and I say, how much are you saving every year for when you retire? And they tell me €100, and I tell you we're then 25% of the group in your profile that saves the most. You will feel very comfortable. You won't invest more with just that piece of information, and vice versa. So these are some automated mechanisms we have. And there are some others that are proxies that are called heuristics in behavioral economics, but these are proxies that we use. The problem is that these proxies are used in some decisions that are quite important. Experiences from others. We say, well, I'm going to just upload a picture of TripAdvisor. But if we go to the case of how our kids choose the college to study in, they took to 2 or 3 friends with you. You've got references, 2 or 3 parents. And basically, with that information, we already have a short list, and from then, we take a decision. So we're not investing time, and we're not taking a thorough decision of the different colleges that exist, the teachers, which one's better for any these different specialties. So leave on the proxy of experiences from the others that maybe to choose a hotel, but also to choose very important things. And this is spectacular. What do? We compare versus something already known. Even until Tinder appeared, how did we choose our couples? Well, it was very simple. We started with one, and then when someone better came, we just changed, or she would change us. We're not going into personal details here. But there comes a time in which you change couple, and you always think, you sometimes make mistakes. You think that the newcomer is better than the previous one, but there comes a time that, as in shoes, you don't want to look more because you understand that that couple that you got is going to be the one you're going to stay with. But you only know that that couple is good because you have been comparing it with others. You didn't say, what is it that I want? I want a couple with these features, in such a way. And within my social level or in another sphere or in another geography, what is it that I want? And from that, I'm going to meet 250 that are in my list, and I choose. No, we don't do that. We do compare always with something we have already known. And that's what we also do when we take decisions that we buy. Well, this is a classic element, but very often, even if we've got things that we don't like, there are products that we have purchased that we don't like, or services that we don't like, we have there a kind of barrier to change. And that basically means that we're more comfortable with what we know than with new things. And very often, we tend to go to the first choice, the first thing I see. And then we've got how in the supermarkets they place products based on that choose a first option available. In the US, in order to improve the health of kids in schools, they have just put the same dishes but in a different place so that kids tend to get more fruit and vegetables, and they have improved the health of kids in schools. When we take these kind of decisions, there are a series of principles that are the biases, errors that we have of our programming. These are principles that we have that help us to act, and that in some way were important, but today lead us to certain mistakes, the biases. The first one is overconfidence. 93% of drivers think that they drive better than the average. Rational? No, that's not rational. That leads us to not having enough investment in the insurances. It leads us to not driving in a cautious way because we all think that we drive better than the rest. That's an over-trust bias. Projection. We all think that life will continue as it's been until now. And it happens when if summer ends, it's like cold comes. Well, it has to come. It's autumn. Cold must come. So what happens when we go to the supermarket and we're hungry? We buy more because our brain thinks that our state is going to last longer. So we all tend to think that our situation, the current situation, is the one that we're going to have in the future. And going back to pensions plans and insurances, it is difficult to make people understand that they will have to change and their situation will change. These are some of the biases that we as companies should bear in mind when focusing on customers. And then sunk cost. This is also applicable to relations. There are some that have invested all their life, and they see they get nowhere because they've invested in a car, which is they're changing the engine, or you buy shares where we've lost a lot. But you like them, you love them. I've lost so much with the shares that, well, it's okay. It doesn't matter losing more, and are not capable to take investment decisions in a rational way, because in some way or another we're related to all the investment in time and efforts of the previous decisions. So previous decisions also have a great weight. And it's difficult for us to acknowledge the error of the taking decisions, and that impedes us to take correct decisions. And then another classical bias of personal relations, we look for information confirming our hypothesis. We look for information confirming what we want to prove, or that will give us the pleasure of what we need, which is being right, or knowing that you do what you do because it's right. So when you have a discussion or we see certain information, that information confirming my hypothesis, I capture it much more easily than the information that is against my principles, my thoughts, or the decision that I want to take. This is like when we're going to buy a car, and the end of it's got a good trunk, it's great. And that's why I got this big four-wheel drive, because its trunk is huge. But really, you want to buy a four-wheel drive, and you saw that what the big trunk is the information that is the excuse, or that even consumes less to buy that four-wheel drive, you know? So, once we've done this, let's go quickly in very simply. I have no training in medicine or psychiatry, so I have taken a model which I really understand how the brain works. Well, let's take only three parts: the frontal, parietal, and limbic. So we're going to do a simple thing. What do we have in these parts of the brain? Well, we have a kid, a human being, us, a chimpanzee, and a computer. This is what we have in our brain. How does this work? Well, the kid or the human takes rational decisions. The chimpanzee is irrational and purely emotional. And then we have a computer when we have kept everything that we've lived and what we've been taught. How does this work? The chimpanzee is the first one receiving the external stimulus. The problem is that it is 5 times stronger than humans. So if we've got an angry chimpanzee or overstimulated, we're going to take decisions that will be irrational, because a chimpanzee wants first to protect us and to protect our species. That's what it basically wants. So we've got certain customs that he's going to use. And in the computer, we've got behaviors, past experience, and we say, can we change that? Well, just in the computer, there are problems in the software that you can change, and there are some others that are in the hard drive that cannot change. And in order to change them, it's much more complicated. And so we get a stimulus. The first one that gets it is a chimpanzee. If the chimpanzee is calm, it will go to the human trying to take a rational decision. If it's proactive, if we don't want to take a rational decision, the chimpanzee will always take the lead. And that translates into the part of the brain that's starting to ask for more blood. Therefore, we're focusing on taking chimpanzee decisions, if we can put that. And sometimes when you take a decision, when I take decisions, I ask myself, was it me or the chimpanzee? I go to the vending machine because I'm exhausted, and as the chimpanzee, that under that stress and tension feeling, he relates to the vending machine to get a Coke or some sugar or a sandwich. And I haven't taken that decision. I should have taken another decision more in line with what I want. And that's basically how the brain works and how we take decisions. And just as a final example, if I propose or I want to sell you an ice cone at 50 cents, according to economics, neoclassical economics, I should have a lot of demand. You remember that basically demand depends on price. So we would all go and buy an ice cream cone, but I have on my records that I've been filled with these kind of examples. It's 50 cents ice cream, it must be horrible. But what am I going to do? According to the frame, depending how the ice cream is being sold, the brand, and the price reference in a series of practice, I will take a decision of if it's a really good, cheap ice cream or if it's a horrible ice cream to buy. So I'm going to take some of the proxies, and we're going to use some of the proxies that we've been talking about. And now we're going to do something that has never, ever been done in a behavioral economics congress. We are going to pass a test. So, the next image, I'm going to remain silent, and you are going to have a test. You're going to take a test. Let's see the results. I hope that what I've explained is useful for you. So let's get ready.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.